What's going on, YouTube family? Today we're going to be talking about the exotic car market. Now, a lot has changed. I was right about a lot of it, but I was wrong with a few things that I want to address in this video because as I was working on my 6x6 getting ready for SEMA, I noticed that prices on a lot of vehicles went down significantly, even my 6x6, which is crazy because I was betting on this one going up instead of going down. So today I'm going to go over all the things I was right about and also things I was wrong about, and to let you guys know, if you're shopping for exotic car, what to look out for. Now, if you guys haven't seen this before, this is the Mercedes 6x6 that I've been building on my channel. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a lot of views, but it's a very cool thing. This will be at SEMA. I'll be driving this thing around and it'll be on display in the Hankook booth. But the reason why I decided to build something like this is because I thought the value of these would go up dramatically, because when I had my Audi R8, I watched prices decrease, but it actually shocked me that the prices of R8s actually went up, but Lamborghinis went down. So what I want to do is talk about the difference between some of these rare exotic cars, why they're going up, and why some of the other ones are actually going down. Had to come back into the studio because it's 114 degrees here in Vegas. I was absolutely sweating to death, so definitely smash the like button for that one. But I think what's happening to the exotic car market is extremely interesting. A lot of the things that I was talking about, how we knew prices were going to go down because demand is slowing down because the money is simply not there, but how some cars are going up and some cars are going down is very interesting. Now let's talk about the Lamborghini Huracan. This is the #1 YouTuber, crypto bro, exotic car. These things were extremely popular, brand new. They were selling for $150,000 over MSRP. And back in the day, you couldn't find a single high mileage beat up Huracan for under $200,000. Even the ones with like 80,000 miles, people were still getting like $250,000, $260,000 for them. Well, today it's a complete 180. This is one of the cars that I thought would really stay above 200. There's a lot of Huracans that you can buy today for under $200,000. I just sold I think it was a 2019 with 40,000 miles for $167,000. So there are definitely a lot of deals out there. Now, I thought those cars were going to stay high and some of the other cars were going to go low. Now, I had a 2022 Audi R8 that I sold for $145,000. Now, it did have 40,000 miles. I drove a lot, but I put a $15,000 center exhaust, bunch of other cool stuff. I had it tuned up to 600 something horsepower, but I thought those cars would drop dramatically because as the Huracans dropped and became more affordable, the Audi R8s would be less desirable. But I was actually completely wrong. A lot of the R8s seem to stayed at about $150,000. They haven't really significantly dropped. So that was a very surprising factor. So I was wrong about that one. If I would have held on my car and sold it today, I possibly could have gotten a little bit more money for it than where the market is at now. Another one that took a huge nosedive are all the McLarens. I don't even have to pick a model, but pretty much these things, once again, were extremely popular during the pandemic. And I saw a lot of banks like Ally overpaying for these types of cars. And on top of that, this is one of the things that fueled the fire is these banks were giving out crazy loans to people that should have never got them. I always tell the story about my buddy. He had a one paid auto loan. It was a Honda Accord for $35,000 and they gave him a Lamborghini Urus. It took me a decade to build up credit. Traditionally, if you wanted an exotic car, you had to buy a $50,000 car, then an $80,000 car, then a $100,000 car, $120,000, $150,000, 200,000, on and on. It's as you build your portfolio. But they started giving out these loans to everybody and their grandma. So McLarens became extremely popular. Now, they used to drop really quickly in price the second they came out, but during the pandemic, they went absolutely nuts. And unfortunately, one of my friends bought a 2021 McLaren 720 for a little over $300,000, I believe, $80,000. Today, that same car is worth somewhere around $220,000. So he's over $100,000 upside down in his current vehicle. Now, thank God he loves the car and doesn't want to sell it, but these are some of the problems that we're having now. So you're seeing a lot of people basically get desperate and sell their cars because they can't afford the payments. And then you have a lot of people that can't take that type of loss. They don't have the money to pay the difference. So they're actually giving them back to the bank. A lot of the banks that I work with said that they've never seen as many exotic car repos as they have in the last 18 months. Traditionally they had to basically chase these people to give them up, but now people are just giving them back to the banks because they can't afford these, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 car payments. And it's only going to get worse. Now, I was surprised on how fast the affordable McLaren, the 570, went down. Now, during the pandemic, all those things were around $200,000. You couldn't find anything. I just saw one today sell for $96,000 at the auction, and I think it had 10,000 miles. So it's kind of interesting to see how the market is going. 720s have dropped significantly because of the 765. McLarens are plagued with mechanical problems and electrical issues, so a lot of people don't like to see these these as a daily driver, so they tend to sell a little bit more on the cheaper side and have a higher depreciation curve. Now, what's happening to Ferrari is pretty interesting. Now, typically when Ferrari makes a low volume supercar, they tend to go up in value. They always appreciate because there's a limited amount of those. But the SF90 absolutely fell off a cliff. Nobody wants it. And so I remember a lot of people buying these things and speccing them out crazy, getting all these features and options. And then when they tried to turn around and sell them 2 years later, nobody wanted them. You get online now and you could literally walk into a bunch of exotic car dealerships and they're just sitting right there. A lot of the older cars, the 48s, the F8s, they're starting to go up in value along with the 430s, the 355s, the 360s, especially if they're manual, because people are tending to go back to that naturally aspirated, more analog feeling. And I remember talking about this on the channel that if you have an exotic or a classic car that's more analog, I think people are going to be chasing those, and those are going to be the most desirable models. Now, look what happened to the Lamborghini Murcielago. For some reason, nobody wanted them. They started going down in price, and what happened? They made a manual conversion. Now, every Murcielago is over $200 and something thousand, even if it's an e-gear, because they know that you're going to buy it, dump 50 grand, make it a manual, and you're going to have an amazing car. And so we're seeing all these 430s and all these other cars being manual swapped as well. So I think this is the trend going forward. The more analog, the more tunable, the more raw feeling you're going to get is what's going to push the value up. Speaking of that, let's talk about Porsche. Now, Porsche has done something absolutely amazing. Now, they were always the affordable supercar, didn't really get all the looks, but they handled amazingly. They would outperform a lot of these supercars that we just talked about on the track. And I think they were always under the radar, because even when I bought my turbo Porsche, I got it for a great deal. But for some reason, during the pandemic, since all the other cars were sold out, I don't know what happened. Everybody started looking at Porsches, and it became extremely popular. New, old, didn't matter. And people really thought that, wow, this is an amazing performance car. Let's start buying these. And the prices absolutely shot through the roof. Now, Porsche was one of the only outliers last year that I made a video about, talking about how the resale value on those cars were still high and they were extremely desirable. And people were chasing these things, especially the limited models. But fast forward to today, the prices of these cars have gone down significantly because the demand is simply not there. I think so many people were paying $400,000 for a Porsche when they realized they can get something like a Lamborghini SVJ or something a little bit more looks for the exact same price. And so now you're starting to look at the Porsche market and it's starting to soften. You know, unless you have something that's really rare or unique, I have a feeling that Porsches are going to continue this downtrend as the other exotics become more affordable. Now let's talk a little bit about Aston Martin. Now, a lot of people sleep on this brand because for years they were very unreliable, they had issues, but after 2019, all the drivetrain in these vehicles had become dependable because they're all Mercedes built. The AMG GTS, the 4.0 V8 twin turbo, that is the drivetrain in the DB11, the Vantage, as well as their SUV. So it's a very reliable platform, and these things are very tunable. You can do some really cool stuff with them. And the coolest thing is you could buy one of these Vantages for under $70,000, a 2020 model with low miles, and even some with some really cool colors. So for less than the price of a fully loaded Ford F-150, you can get something that James Bond drove, and somebody probably paid over $200,000 for it, brand new, which absolutely blows my mind. And it's a great car, great touring sedan. I love these things. I think this is going to be one of those cars that's going to be slept on. The value is going to drop. So if you're looking to get an affordable and exotic car, that's one I would look for. Now, I'm not really going to talk too much about hypercars because hypercars are in a league of their own. Even if the economy sucks and lending is hard, it doesn't matter. Those people pay all cash. The Bugattis, the Puganis, all those cars, the Koenigsegg's, that don't even factor into this. Now, a reason you're seeing a lot of exotic car prices dropping have to do with not only the market and the economy, but the actual lending aspect. Almost every major bank decided to pump the brakes and said, no way, we're not going to lend on these exotic cars anymore. For some reason, everybody threw in their hat during the pandemic and they started lending regular people money for exotic cars. This is why you started seeing all these people with them. Before, owning an exotic car was really cool. The first time I bought a Ferrari, I remember driving up and down Las Vegas Boulevard on a Friday night, and I'd be lucky if I saw another Lamborghini or a Ferrari. Today, just in my neighborhood alone, I could drive out and I could probably see about 10 of these things hitting the road. It's just absolutely insane. I feel like everybody's got them, and now the mystique and the uniqueness is gone because its financing has made it so affordable. Back in the day, you had to stroke a check for these things. Only Lamborghini or Ferrari would finance you on these vehicles. But today, your local credit union will give you a $200,000 loan at 6% to let you buy whatever exotic car you want, which absolutely blows my mind. And so now we're seeing all these people doing these crazy loans, buying them. Also, I don't know if you guys know Woodside Credit, shout out if you guys are watching, but they have a 10-year loan on collectible and exotic cars. So there are people out here running around with an 8 to 15% auto loan for 10 years just so they can afford the car payment. I'll let you do the math and you can figure out how much money they're paying in interest. But these are some of the crazy things that people were doing during the pandemic that made exotic cars so affordable. And now that the money's been sucked out of the economy, banks don't want to lend because why are they going to give somebody a $200,000 loan when they'd rather give a bunch of $20,000 loans and balance that out through their portfolio? Because remember, there are record high delinquencies and defaults, and exotic cars and tier 1 credit are no exception. I remember Experian, and I think a few insiders were saying that Ally Finance, their tier 1 customers, were typically around maybe a 3% default, and they were hovering a little over 8% as of last year. So I don't even know what that number is today, but even people with good credit are starting to go bad. It kind of reminds you of 2008, when basically the money got sucked out of the economy, people lost their jobs, they were overpaying for everything, living off of their credit cards, and now they can't afford these exotic cars. So one of the other reasons why a lot of these exotic cars are going down in prices and value is because of the maintenance. Now, we have a saying in the car business, anybody can buy a Ferrari, but it takes a truly rich person to pay for the maintenance. And that's 100% true. I remember a few of my friends buying those Ghiblis and Levantes, whatever else, the little SUV from Maserati for like next to nothing at the auction because these things were going for really cheap. But guess what happens when they had to take them in for service? We're talking $200 to $350 an hour. Parts are all coming from Ferrari, very expensive. So now they're buying something the price of a new Kia and paying absolute insane amount to service it. Ferrari, Lamborghini, exact same thing. I bought an R8. The only reason I got it for such a cheap deal, the guy had carbon ceramic brakes, was driving it around, thought he was a hotshot on the track, cooked the brake system. When he went in the Audi, it was $20,000 to redo the brakes. I got a Bentley Continental, the exact same thing. Carbon ceramic brakes. Guy couldn't afford to replace the rotors, brake pads. He also cooked the actual calipers. $30,000 to replace all that is the quote he got from the dealership. So he winded up giving it back to the bank. We bought it from the bank, bought the parts, fixed it, took it back to the auction. But this is some of the things that I tell people, you don't think about it. That's why if you want to see the most roached out exotic cars, it's going to be Huracans, it's going to be Audi R8s, and Lamborghini Urus's, because these are all reliable cars that don't break down that often. So people tended to put a lot of miles on them and just beat them up and use them for rentals. That's another thing I've seen. A lot of these people that can't afford them have been trying to stick them on Turo and other rental car platforms, trying to just rent them out just so they can make the payments. But like I said, insurance is extremely high. Maintenance is extremely high. You know, these cars need a lot of money. And if you do certain things like not doing the preventative maintenance and not actually taking care of the car, the values of those cars drop dramatically. So every time I go to the auction, there's another exotic car that's beat up that I'm buying way back a book that I can restore, fix up, put some stuff on there, and I could sell it for cheaper than the guy down the street is selling the exact same car for. So you're going to continue to see these prices decrease and values because of the softening of the market and the demand. Because at the end of the day, I tell everybody, the market is set by the people and the demand. If people are not out here chasing these cars, they're not going to do it. And traditionally, rich people that want exotic cars, they'll only buy them when they have the money and they don't want to allocate their assets to anything. But most rich people during a down economy, they're pulling all their money out and they're waiting to see where the opportunities to buy distressed properties, some sort of investments. Even I know people are dumping a bunch of money in crypto right now. They're all getting rid of their exotic cars and other things to put money back into something that'll make money for them, some other asset. And so with this continued demand fall off, you're going to see these prices go down more and more. But anyways, I thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any opinions on the market, please put them down. Have you noticed anything changing? Now, I do see a lot of dealers charging crazy amounts of money for cars. They're always going to do that because they're going to try to sell them for exactly what they want. But don't be surprised if a car's been sitting there for 6 months. Go make an offer. They're going to take it because they need to get it off their flooring line or just to get rid of it in general. But anyways, thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.